Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Carl and Heather Present podcast. Today's guest is Mike Vogt with Transform South Sudan. What in the world are we doing talking about Transform South Sudan on a marriage podcast? Well, we're going to get into it. Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, don't you know it's Carl and Heather Present Marriage Podcast.
So you and I met, well, we all met through church initially, but it really, why we're here today is that about 18 months ago, I went on a trip with you to South Sudan.
Yes, you did.
And it was my first time. I'll talk a little bit about my experience in a second, but it was not your first time.
Correct.
So do you know how many times you've been off the top of your head?
Yep.
Okay.
This past November was trip number 14 for me.
14.
Yep.
So take us back to the beginning. How did you end up getting connected with South Sudan?
Yeah.
And tell us that story.
Yeah, there was a pastor at our church, a man named Meredith Kinder, who passed me in the hallway, and he said, we're sending a team to Sudan this year, and he said, you should go. And I remember looking at him thinking, what on earth would cause you to have that thought cross your mind?
Sure.
And he said something to the extent of, you know your Bible well, you're a good teacher, and that's exactly what they need out there. We train pastors, and they said, I think you'd be really, really, really good on that team. So I prayed about it and said, let's go. And I went on that first trip in 2006, and it was completely life-changing. Like I've never been the same since, kind of level-changing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you met a man named James there.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about James and his story.
Yeah, I met a guy named James Bach, who's one of the Lost Boys of Sudan. And if you've never heard of the Lost Boys, these are a group of youngsters that walked approximately 1,000 miles to find safety during the Civil War of Sudan. This is back in the late 1980s. 50,000 children would leave on the journey of the Lost Boys, and only about 20,000 of them would ultimately arrive at this refugee camp in Ethiopia. But he was one of the ones that got there. And in this refugee camp in Ethiopia, he heard the gospel. He walked into a church service in the refugee camp and heard a sermon on John 3:16, and he gave his life to Christ, which was kind of fun. And then while he was in this refugee camp, he met a missionary who also paid for him to receive a high school education. And so he also became educated, in his context, right? So he received a high school education. And James would ultimately leave the refugee camp. He would head back to his village, having heard the gospel and become a follower of Jesus and having received an education. And I met James in his village because he was highly committed to bringing those two gifts to his fellow countrymen. Yeah. And I met James in Vietnam, South Sudan for the first time in 2006 while I was training a group of pastors there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and since then, you've been going back and taking teams.
Yep.
Your wife has not gone with you.
Correct.
Your daughter, have both your daughters gone?
Just my youngest daughter. My oldest wasn't able to get time away from university yet, but she's studying to be a nurse, so she definitely plans to come.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, but your wife, I love that this is a family affair because the teams that you take, you do training at your home. I was honored to be a part of that. And your wife feeds us and takes care of us.
That's her superpower. Yep.
It is a superpower. She's an excellent cook and prays for us. Yeah. And it's just a support system. And so it's this thing where your marriage is strengthened by linking arms and doing this thing together.
Absolutely.
I love watching that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Tell us about what's happening, though. We want to know in South Sudan about not necessarily the needs. Well, we'll talk about the needs in a minute, but I want to know about, you talked about teaching pastors. What else is going on there?
Yeah. When we go to South Sudan, you'll see a number of different things happening. But when we bring teams, we're training pastors, we're doing women's ministry, we're doing like a children's vacation Bible school, which is controlled chaos over there. Nice. And we also, we've started a medical facility a number of years ago because one of the people I met on my very first trip to South Sudan was a young kid that snuck into pastor training. His name was Angelo. And at 12 years of age, he was an orphan and his parents had died of treatable illnesses. And he had a dream of becoming a doctor. And I fell in love with this kid. And every time I'd go back, I'd see Angelo. And he would become this village's first ever doctor. And so now when we go to Vietnam, South Sudan, we are also bringing medical people because we've got a medical facility that's serving the region now, which is kind of great.
Yeah.
So.
Talk a little bit about South Sudan as a country.
Yeah.
The conditions of South Sudan in comparison to other, what you might, consider tough countries, third world countries. How does South Sudan compare to other countries around the world who need help?
Yeah. So South Sudan is officially the youngest country in the world. This summer, July 4th, as a country, America will celebrate its 250th birthday.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. 5 days later, on July 9th, South Sudan will celebrate its 15th birthday. So it was born July 9th, 2011. It's the youngest country on the planet. And it feels like a startup, if you know what I'm saying.
Wow.
There's a lot of things that they just haven't figured out yet. It's hard there. There's just a lot of ways where they struggle. If you look at the Human Development Index, which was a criteria that the United Nations developed a number of years ago to sort of figure out what's the level of development across all 193 countries in the world, South Sudan literally is number 193 out of 193 countries that exist. They are the least developed country on the planet, surprisingly outranked even by Somalia, which is crazy. Wow. And they measure things like what's the level of education that the average person attains, what's the life expectancy, which is their indicator light on healthcare and access to health. And they also measure how much money do the people earn, like sort of on a 30-day basis. Those three things are the three items combined are what lead to development. And South Sudan, sadly, again, is at the bottom of the ranking system in that.
That's a rough deal when you upgrade your neighborhood by moving to Somalia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so help us understand. I mean, I understand from having been there. You understand even more from having gone many times.
Sure.
What is it like? Like, walk into, like, the plane lands. Describe it for us.
Yeah. Well, and the first part of that is how fun it is when the plane lands, because
it's not a plane that you think.
Right. Yeah. It's a puddle jumper prop jet. And the plane will do a low pass over the landing strip to scare all the cows off of the landing strip and to inspect it for damages. And then it'll come back around a second time and it will land. And when you get off the plane, there will be over 2,000 people that will be singing and dancing to greet you. Like, it's a wonderful place. So it's a place of simplicity. It looks like it's a part of the world that hasn't changed much since the times of Jesus. People go to bed in mud huts. They go down to the river and try to catch a fish to be able to have lunch that day. It's a really, really simple, wonderful place. But it's also, it's quite hard. It's hard as well. It's impoverished. There's just a lot of areas where they struggle, just plainly. But I love it there. It feels like a second home to me. The people are joyful. They're constantly smiling. They're so glad to be able to greet a visitor. And it's a wonderful, wonderful place. And they've grown a lot since we started going, or since I started going for the first time, roughly 20 years ago. There's been so much development, which has really helped out the village, which has been wonderful.
Okay, I'm just thinking about you and my friendship with you. And I know you're a Transform South Sudan guy. You're also a successful businessman, business owner, and now you're working with C12 as an executive coach. And so you coach CEOs.
Correct. Yep.
Those two worlds, the world that you just described of, like, the simplest version of life, mud huts.
Yeah.
And then this CEO coach role. Like, what's at the heart of your ambition for both things?
Yeah.
How does your passion intersect for this business world and then the world in South Sudan? What drives you to serve these people? You could be in boardrooms and being, moving and shaking, but there's something about your heart that says, no, I actually feel at home, or like a second home in South Sudan. Tell me about that.
That's a good question. I think what's central to both of those two different worlds, and as you were describing them, they almost couldn't be further apart.
Totally.
But in one sense, they have a very common vein, and that is gospel-centered life change. In South Sudan, James Bach returned to his village to bring the gospel because he felt like no one in my village has ever heard of Jesus Christ before, and it's my job. I want to put that weight on my shoulders to tell my people about Jesus. And I saw his passion for bringing the gospel to the village on my first trip there in 2006. And it was that passion that moved me and made me want to be a part of coming back and helping him to affect the change that he desired. In the world of C12, I coach business owners. I coach CEOs, executives, high-powered business owners, but I help them to intersect their faith into how they run and lead their companies. It's about gospel-centered change, but it's a different mission field. It's in the business world as opposed to being in rural South Sudan. They are both about what can Jesus do to change the world in whatever context you're in.
Yeah,
That's good, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know a story or two of something that over the years that has really affected you, or something that you could share with us that would just give us a little more insight into your time there.
Yeah. Well, the first story I would share would be the story of this young kid I met in Vietnam on my first trip. This young orphan, Angelo, at 12 years of age. Okay. Can I share that story first? Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
So Angelo was 12 years old. And he was a kid sitting in the front row of pastor training. There was 40-odd pastors that were meeting under a tree, and Angelo was holding a Frisbee. Very iconic image of who he was in the life stage he was in.
Yeah.
Angelo wasn't invited to pastor training, but he snuck in because it was the only thing going on in the village that day. And there was a bunch of white people that had showed up, and he's like, what are they doing here? Let's check this out. Mm-hmm. I'm training a group of about 40 pastors, and there's a language barrier. They don't speak English, and I don't speak Dinka, so we're going through a translator, and I wasn't sure how well things were tracking, so I pause after about 10 minutes and say, who knows the answer to this question? And this 12-year-old kid in the front row, Angelo, shoots his hand up. And I said, okay, youngster, what's the answer to this question? And he got it exactly. I'm like, okay, he's listening. Great job. Yeah. Teach for another 15 minutes. And it's okay, who knows the answer to this question? And his hand shoots up again. And I'm waiting for other hands to shoot up, but he's very enthusiastically saying, oh, ask me. So I pointed to him, and he got the answer exactly again. And this 12-year-old kid who wasn't even invited, it was clear to me that he was the smartest guy in the room. Now, he wasn't there because he was planning to be a pastor. He was an orphan. What I learned about his story is that both of his parents had died of treatable illnesses, but because there were no doctors or medical facilities in the region, his parents kind of died needlessly. And he and his 3 younger siblings were being kept alive by the goodwill of James Bach and one other pastor in the area, a guy named Abraham. And they were providing food for him and his siblings, giving them a place to sleep, etc. Well, anyways, I'd keep coming back to Vietnam time after time after time. Every year I'd see Angelo. He couldn't wait to see us. And so we invested in his high school education. We sent him away to Kenya to get high school educated because we wanted to make sure that he got a good investment in his education. And then years later, through a variety of circumstances, we would also agree to invest in Angelo's university education. He had a burning desire to become a doctor. And I think it was because of his story. His parents died of treatable illnesses, and he's like, I can be a change agent. How can I help my people to get well, to be treated? How can I develop the skills to make this better? And so he would become a doctor. I'd put together a team of people, and I felt the Holy Spirit nudging me to step in and to support him. So he would become this village's first doctor through something called our Leaders of Tomorrow Scholarship Program. And now Angelo's back in Vietnam in his home village serving as the only doctor for 100 miles in any direction. There is a crazy supply and demand shortage of skilled medical workers in South Sudan. And when you talk about how is it different there, there is, if anyone here in USA gets sick and you need a doctor, you've got a pretty high level of confidence you'll be able to figure that out.
Yeah,
sure.
Right? Statistically, there's one doctor in the USA for every 416 people that live in the USA. One for every 416. South Sudan, one doctor for every 65,574 people that live there. So there's a massive shortage, and there's also a different road system.
Yeah.
You've seen that. The roads are all dirt roads, and they get washed out by seasonal rain. So even if you know where a doctor is, your odds of being able to get there are quite low. And so for us to have put a medical facility in this region and with a skilled hand serving it through Dr. Angelo and a support team, it's been pretty great. So that's been an amazing story in that part of the world.
Wow. And so Angelo is what we would call a GP. Mm-hmm. But he also has to do things like deliver babies and do the surgeries that can be done in the clinic. Tell us about the clinic. I know you have more stories, but I want to hear about this clinic that Angelo works in.
Yeah.
like when I think of a clinic, I think of a place where I can go and get stitches and I can have minor surgeries and I can have things like that. Can you do major surgeries? What can be done?
So first of all, we are just giddy that we have this clinic. Like it is a beacon of light for people who live anywhere near this. Picture an area where there's only one hospital that functions and with skilled medical people that know what they're doing, that have been trained at university and medical schools. It's the only medical facility for 100 miles in any direction. And this is an area where people don't have vehicles. Like if some people own bicycles, but for the most part, if you need to get to a medical facility, you're walking. Some people are walking 3 and 4 days to be able to get there. And usually it's when you need the facility that you're not really able to make that walk really easily, right? So picture that context. But at the facility, we do a lot of good. Angelo is extremely capable, extremely skilled. He's got a support team of a physician's assistant, several nurses, a couple midwives. So there's a lot of stuff we treat there. Much of it is related to things like malaria, waterborne illnesses like typhoid and enteric fever, stuff like that. In South Sudan, if you look at the statistics, it's also the part of the world where women are most likely to lose their life with complications related to childbearing. And so we're really grateful to have a spot where women can deliver safely at the clinic with skilled hands that are attending to them. The number of stories I've heard on my trips to South Sudan of women who realize it's the big day and the baby's coming, and it's time to start pushing, but something's wrong, and they don't know what's wrong, and they don't know why baby's not coming out. Before we had a clinic here, they would start walking towards the nearest facility, which was 100 miles away, and they would just die on the roadside.
Yeah, I have to, like, women who have delivered babies, imagine you're going into labor, like one of the most traumatic experiences for your body, and then saying, hey, but you got to walk 100 miles before you do that. Like, I cannot even imagine. It's unfathomable to me to think of that. Now, let me ask you a question about delivery, because a lot of us, myself included, one of my babies was delivered via C-section. And so what about that? What?
Yeah, in our facility, we can't create a sterile environment right now. And so if births are complicated to the point that we need to open up the body and do like a C-section, we're not able to do that at this time. If the roads are passable, we put them in a vehicle and we send them off to a hospital in that city, the nearest city, which is about 105 miles away. But we can't do a C-section at the clinic yet, and it's one of our limiting factors. Skilled hands can do a number of things on the big day of delivery, but there's some complications that we're just not set up to navigate yet, again, because we can't create a sterile environment. It's a really dusty area. We don't control temperature. We don't control airflow. So it's unsafe to be able to do any type of a surgical type birth at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's good to hear that, because, again, when I think of a clinic, even here, if it's a clinic that can't do surgeries, it's still a very sterile environment. It's still really clean, and
100%.
there's still all the things that you would need to do that. I even think about on our trip, the trip that I went on with you, we were able to do a blood donation, right?
Yep.
And I mean, when I say that, nobody thinks twice about that. You go to the local library or donations, donate blood, that kind of thing. And then the blood was actually transfused into a person right then, like right after we donated it. But a lot of these people are dying because they just need a blood donation.
Yep.
And it's not available.
Yeah, I remember that specific story. I remember being there with you because there was a baby, an infant, probably 2 years old, that was brought to the clinic, and they were so advanced in their malaria that their blood had become anemic. And Angelo ran this infant's blood through the blood chemistry analyzer at the clinic, and their hemoglobin was like 2.3, or and again, I'm not a medical person, but I know that's bad. Yeah. And Angelo said, this baby's not likely to see the morning. And so they were looking around for a blood match. You were a match, and so you gave your blood right there. And after it came out of you, it was cooled for like 10 minutes, and then immediately went into this infant. And you were able to sit with them the next day. Yeah. You saved a life.
Well, it was to this point one of the highest points in my life, because I don't know if you know this or not, but our oldest son Oak had to have a major surgery when he was a baby, and he needed blood, and I was not a match, and so we had donors that gave blood. We didn't know them, just donations of blood. I didn't think twice about is my kid going to be able to get blood? Like that was not a concern of mine. There were lots of other concerns.
Yeah.
But the fact that I could pay it forward, and this is a full circle moment for me, and watching this baby, the blood being transfused, and he's literally laying there lifeless. And when you say 2-year-old, he looked so much younger to us because of just nutrition and things like that.
Yeah.
But just come to life almost and cry and begin nursing. I remember watching him nurse again, and he had not been nursing. And so it was, I felt like I was a part of a miracle, and such an honor to do that. And so simple.
Yeah.
Such a simple thing to do that anybody, any of our listeners, anybody, yeah, sure, I'd do that.
Yeah.
But there's more we can do.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So this idea of this clinic, we need a clinic to be able, or we need to expand the clinic.
That's right.
We need a maternity ward where we can do those C-sections. Okay, so tell us about that, that need, what that would cost, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So on our last trip, I spoke to the leaders at it's called the HIC Women's Clinic in South Sudan. HIC is a word that means creator God, and we named it that way. Angelo and James decided on the name because they're like, every time we heal someone, we want them to know it was God working through the hands of the skilled workers.
And don't they write the names
We read the
on the
names
walls?
of every newborn on the wall.
Every newborn. There's just like it's graffiti walls. It's beautiful. It's just written down. It's awesome. Okay.
Yep. And it's the HIC, it's the women's clinic because it was the women who have suffered so much from the absence of care. But I remember talking to the medical workers and say, hey, if we were to identify priorities for this upcoming year, the things we want to try to focus our fundraising efforts on, what's most important? And a few things came up. Top of the list for them is a maternity ward. Right now, there's a single patient ward. It's a structure we built a few years ago. But in the main patient ward, you've got people who have got illnesses, sicknesses. Some of them are contagious. And just across the hallway from them are the mothers who are delivering and the mothers who are recovering from delivering and their babies. We've got mothers who are getting sick. Because they're the sick people on the other side of the hallway that's just passing through the air, and the mothers are getting ill. Newborns, brand newborns, are getting fevers from this. So we want to create another structure to separate the pregnant, the delivering mothers into a different building so they've got their own space. But we also want to be able to build a very rudimentary operating theater, super, super simple, but so that we can do things like C-sections and stuff like that. Anything that has a higher level of complication, we want to be able to do it there and not send them 100 miles away and hope it works out well. We want to improve our capabilities. Mm-hmm. So yes, we desperately would love to do a maternity ward at the HIC Women's Clinic. And there's going to be some cost involved in doing that, but it's the biggest need we have right now to help alleviate that pressure point in the community.
How much will it cost if we wanted to write a check right now for the maternity ward? How much would it be?
Yeah, it's going to be approximately $85,000 to be able to build the maternity ward. That's going to give us a place so we can do examinations of mothers as they're experiencing the various stages of their pregnancy. There'll be a delivery room and also a recovery room, and then a very, very simple operating theater that'll have the air control and the temperature control and stuff, so we can control the environment to get it sterile enough to be able to do that with confidence.
And then that enables the cesarean section and
exactly
any other thing like that.
Yep.
But all of that
$85,000.
$85,000.
That's right.
Which is, for some of us, what a extended stay in the hospital would cost for one person.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
In an American hospital. Okay, here's what I love about this whole thing. I remember this need being so prevalent because on our trip, we had this kind of we were breaking down kind of, and I remember you just kind of had this moment because there was it a child or a baby that had oxygen?
Yeah.
Right? And who was sick.
Yep.
But then a new mom who had just delivered.
Yeah.
Right? Who needed oxygen. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I remember that so clearly as well. So you had just pulled up, I think, to give blood is what brought you to the clinic that afternoon. We only had one oxygen concentrator at the clinic, and there was a child who had pneumonia in both lungs, and like a small child, maybe 1 or 2 years old, that was breathing through this little nebulizer mask, and wasn't able to. I remember looking at this child because his chest was contracting very erratically, and I didn't understand it. And Angelo said, yeah, his intercostal muscles, the muscles between the ribs, were contracting to try to create lung function. And he said the kid can't breathe without his intercostal muscles contracting. I'm like, holy cow. He's like, yeah, he's got very advanced pneumonia. Well, across the hall, A mother had just given birth and was experiencing postpartum hemorrhage and had passed away and fell off the recovery bed. And the doctor on our team had called and said, "Hey, I need oxygen. Bring me oxygen now to revive this woman." Well, they took the oxygen machine off of this infant that needed it to breathe, to give to this mother. And I'm like, whoa, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And Shannon's like, Dr. Shannon said, "I need this now." And I'm like, well, what's going to happen to this kid? And I just lost it.
Yeah.
I just lost it. I'm like, why do we only have one oxygen concentrator here? But it's those kinds of decisions that you see happen every day at the clinic. And it's hard because it's a young new clinic that relies on donations to get whatever they have. And so there's always a need of some kind that's not being met.
Yeah. Well, here's the reason why we're partnering with Transform South Sudan and why we're so passionate about this, because, this is a marriage podcast, and some people might be listening thinking, well, this is a marriage podcast. Why are we helping this? But this is at the heart of every marriage. We are all here because our mothers had conditions that enabled them to deliver us safely. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whether it was by cesarean or regular birth or whatever, but we all benefited. The three of us benefited, and every family that exists benefited because there was a healthy delivery. And the idea is that, motherhood does not need improvement, but it does need a condition where it can survive. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we are linking together as couples and as people listening on our podcast. We're going to invite you into this because one of the things we talk about in connection as a couple, and you and Lynn are great examples of doing this and your giftedness in your areas, is that if we serve together, it brings us closer together.
It does.
Yeah, we recently had someone ask a question, I don't feel like I have anything in common with my spouse anymore. How can I reestablish some connection with some common ground. And they were talking about like music and, different favorite restaurants and things like that, television shows. And Heather and I are pretty different when it comes to things like that.
Yes.
But the thing that has glued us together over the years is not like, do we like the same TV shows or restaurants? Mm-hmm. It's the places where we've found that we can lock arms with each other and serve somebody else. Yep. That's the place where connection grows. And so for the marriage relationship that seems to be drifting into isolation, one of the foolproof ways of drawing a couple back together that I've seen over the years is just answering the question, where can we as a couple make an impact for the life of somebody that needs help?
Yep.
And for me and Heather, she's gone to South Sudan. We're looking at this and saying, just for us in our marriage, we want to find a way to impact in the way that we can this ministry, and we want to help you build this maternity ward at the HIC Women's Clinic.
Amazing.
We want to help build it.
Yeah.
And so it's $85,000. Do you have that on you?
No, I don't have it on me. But here's what I want to say. The collective, it's a collective we. And so there are people, you're listening or you're watching and you think, well, I can't do a lot. Well, right. Individually, we can't, but together we can do this. And so here's what we're inviting you into. We want to do it this year, 2026. And we are working, that's all of us, everybody listening and watching, to build this maternity ward in South Sudan so that women can have safe and healthy deliveries. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. As we mentioned, it's going to cost $85,000. It's not about giving, it's about stewardship, and it's about tending the things that God has put in our path. And if you're listening or you're watching, God has put this in your path. It's something that you know about now. You can't unknow it because you just heard about it. Here's a cool thing. We also have a matching gift of up to half. So anything you give is doubled, which is incredible. So that helps us get there even more quickly. And so I'm just going to ask, if you're able to give today, I want you to give today. And we're going to have a link to give in the description of this episode. You can also go to transformsouthsudan.org/maternity. Again, that's transformsouthsudan.org/maternity. And we want to do this as families, as couples. We want to link arms together to give. And this can be, you mentioned, babe, serving. This could be something that you say, well, I can only give this much. Well, what about What about your church? What about your ministry, your church that's your marriage ministry? What about your small group? Could your small group do something?
Right.
Could you have a yard sale? Could you have, could you do a fundraiser? Could you do something so that you said, hey, we linked arms together as a married couple and with other people in our community, and we helped invest in this. We helped build this. Yep. That's a beautiful thing.
And this is something that we're going to begin doing as a small part of this podcast platform moving forward through 2026 through the rest of the year. Mike, we want to help and we want to move the needle, and the incentive for us is that we'll get closer together. We're not trading anything. This is a work of the heart that the Lord has put on our heart. He's obviously put this call on your heart, and we want to partner with you and Lynn. We want to partner with you and James, who's the pastor that's there on the ground. I've met James many times. He's a wonderful man. This is worth doing, not because it's like some business partnership, because there's no question about, do I need to pray about helping people like this? Do I need to think very long at all about getting involved in a ministry like this? The answer is no. We've been called to it over and over through the gospel. And so, and it's, especially in a place like South Sudan, Mike already said, it's the poorest of all the poor countries. It's the roughest of all the rough places. What a great opportunity to shed the light of the gospel and to one day literally have brick and mortar established and generation after generation raised up from this place. It doesn't exist now, but by faith, we'll break ground on it this year.
Yeah. That's exciting. That's exciting.
If you want to give, again, the link is in the bio or in the description of the podcast. Mike, thank you for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for telling the story. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of what you're doing. And I'm just so thankful. You're such a good friend to me. And I'm grateful for you. You're a good friend to me and Heather. We love you. And man, keep going.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's a passion.
Yeah.
It's a passion, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. It's become such a rich and fulfilling part of my life and my journey of faith. So I'm grateful to be a part of the story of what the Lord's doing in South Sudan.
All right. We always say this at the end, together on purpose.
Together on purpose.
Together on purpose.
Together on purpose.
Let's go, Mike.
Let's go.